The life of Vincent van Gogh. Have you ever wondered about the life of the artist behind Starry Night, Bedroom at Arles, or Sunflowers? Today I'm going to share the information I learned through research about Vincent van Gogh's life. I will be covering Van Gogh's early life, midlife, and the end of his life. To start off, I will be telling you about Vincent's early life. The story of Vincent van Gogh begins on March 30th, 1853, in the province of Brabant, Holland. His father, Theodorus van Gogh, was a Protestant minister who married Vincent's mother, Anna. He was the oldest of 6 children. In fact, according to an online source, quote, exactly a year before his birth, his mother gave birth to an infant, also named Vincent, who was stillborn. His grieving parents buried the child and set up a tombstone to mark the grave. As a result, Vincent van Gogh grew up near the haunting site of a grave with his own name upon it. End quote. As a teen, Vincent was encouraged by his mother to paint and draw, and he did so frequently. Vincent's uncle was a partner in Goupil and Company art dealers. He began working for the firm at age 16. He worked in the Netherlands, London, then Paris. 6 years later, he was fired from the company for having an unpleasant attitude. He returned to England and worked at a small school and did some preaching. It wasn't until 1880 that Vincent decided to dedicate his life to art. In October of 1880, after his many attempts at a regular job, he enrolled in an art school in Brussels, where he studied anatomy and the basics of perspective. Vincent then moved back in with his parents and enrolled at an academic art school in Holland. This began Van Gogh's Dutch period. He focused on poor people. He used dreary colors such as browns, grays, and greenish shades. His masterpiece of this time is a piece he created in 1885 called Potato Eaters. It is a scene in which peasants sit around a table preparing to eat. Now I will be sharing a little bit about Vincent's midlife. Vincent decided in early 1886 to go to Paris, partially because he was drawn to the artistic life. His younger brother Theo also lived in Paris. Theo directed a small gallery maintained by Vincent's previous employer, Goupil and Company. Theo had supported Vincent financially and emotionally from the time he decided to become a painter until the end of his life. According to an online source, quote, Vincent shared Theo's apartment and studied in an art school run by the traditional painter Fernand Cormon. Now Van Gogh was largely under the influence of the Impressionists and started to stray away from the gloomy style of his painting, end quote. Vincent started to paint in bright, high-key colors at this time. He no longer focused on people. He started to paint cafes and cityscapes around the northern area of Paris called Montmartre. However, even though his works were obviously taken from Impressionism, there were often a certain gloomy or sad quality. For example, in a scene of Montmartre, the pedestrians pictured are pushed to the side of an open square. By this point, Vincent was tired of depending on his brother Theo. He left for Arles in southern France in 1888. According to an online source, quote, the pleasant country about Arles and the warmth of the place restored Van Gogh to health. In his 15 months there, he painted over 200 pictures, end quote. At this time, he created Night Cafe in the artist's bedroom at Arles. Now I will tell you about the end life of Van Gogh. Towards the end of Vincent's stay at Arles, things started going south. Vincent started to have seizures and fainting spells. The locals also began to turn against him. According to my sources, quote, Paul Gauguin, responding to his invitation, visited Vincent in October of 1888, but the two men quarreled violently. Gauguin left for Paris, and Van Gogh, in a fit of remorse and anger, cut off part of his ear. On May 9th, in 1889, he admitted himself to the asylum, a hospital for the mentally ill, end quote. Van Gogh was productive in his time spent in the asylum. He produced over 150 paintings and hundreds of drawings. However, his art changed tremendously. He no longer painted in bright hues of yellows and reds. His colors began to turn into copper and brownish tones. His lines were restless, and he began painting in thick layers. He took inspiration from nature, painting swirling suns and trees, and this is where he created his most famous painting, Starry Night. 15 months later, Vincent was released and went to visit his brother Theo. Theo sent Vincent to Alvars to be under the care of Dr. Gachet, who was an amateur painter. Vincent arrived at Alvars on May 21st in 1890. He painted a portrait of the doctor and his portraits of his daughter, as well as Church of Alvars. According to a source, quote, "At first Van Gogh felt relieved at Alvars, but toward the end of June he experienced fits of temper and often quarreled with Gachet. On July 27th, 1890, he shot himself in a lonely field and died the morning of July 29th in 1890. He was 37 years old." In conclusion, the life of Vincent van Gogh was hard. Though his early life, midlife, and toward the end of his life faced many struggles, he never gave up. His life was unexpectedly and unfortunately cut short. Although he was not successful until after his death, the impact he made on the art world and the world alike will live on forever.